Hello, 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 game developers, game fans, game publishers, and everybody in between. I'm the Purple Sharpie, one of the two hosts at this Game Devs of Color Expo 2023, and I'm here with three different developers from Pretty Smart Games. I have Miko, who is the studio lead and creative developer. How are you doing today, Miko?
I'm doing great. We are super excited to be here with you.
I'm super excited here. And not only you, but we also have Audrey, who is the art lead, UI, UX, and character designer. How are you doing today, Audrey?
I'm awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for being awesomely amazing. And finally, we have Ryako, the composer and sound designer for Pretty Smart Games. How are you doing, Ryako?
I am doing fine. Thanks for having us here.
I love to hear it. Fabulously fine. Everybody is all aligned. Now, Miko, with all of our energies perfectly in syncopation, please go ahead and describe to me this project that I've been hearing so much about, the Spirit Lift.
Of course, we're making the Spirit Lift, which is a retro horror deck builder. You control a group of teenagers that find a magic elevator in a haunted hotel and then have to fight their way back out. So if you like strategy card games, if you like campy teenage horror, if you like cute, spooky creatures, I think you're probably going to enjoy our game.
Now, Miko, as someone who's a fan of the campiness, the general spookiness, and just overall, it sounds like aesthetically 90s card building games, I am incredibly excited to see more about this game. And I just so happen to have an amazing trailer to showcase right here. Okay, everybody. So obviously that trailer leaves me completely without words, which is why I happened to write up some amazing interview questions. And we'll go ahead and get started with Miko. Miko, I saw that the game takes place in 1998, and there are a series of 90s references scattered throughout the entirety of this game. Talk to me about how influential 90s culture was to the creation of this game and where the idea from the game came from.
Oh, dang. There's so much going on with that genre, that decade that we really wanted to bring in. I think as you as you get older, you start to really look back fondly on like your child years, your teenage years. I love the 80s as well, but when we were thinking about making this game, it felt like a real opportunity to capture that teenage 90s energy. And it was such a great time for horror as well. Steam, I'm thinking too much about games. Scream is like probably my favorite horror series of all time, and that had such amazing meta energy and teenagers goofing off and real scares in it. And also the Blair Witch Project was really I'm definitely dating myself here, but I was in theaters for Blair Witch Project. And that was such an experience for me because the whole theater was packed and no one was talking at the end of that movie. Everyone was just freaking terrified, believing that it was real, right? So when we first came up with the idea of doing a deck builder that was set in horror, we actually started with this game taking place in the woods and making it more of a found footage game where these teenagers are filming everything and they run into some creepy monsters. And then after we had a paper prototype and we were playing more with the gameplay, that's when the idea for the hotel came out. A cool thing about a hotel, it is one of those liminal spaces where everyone's been in one, but you know other people have been there over time, over decades. And even though we have this like deep 90s, like, theme to it, that's the time period the characters know. This hotel goes back much farther. It goes back over 100 years. And so we also get to play with the whole history of this town that they're in and all these different eras that kind of built into the history of this hotel. And maybe you're still living there and causing some trouble. So that's been really fun on this project.
I love the premise of the project as well, grabbing from all of these, I would say, nostalgic horrors now, which saying nostalgic about the 90s just makes me feel so incredibly old. I'm sure every
I
single
know.
millennial right now can relate. But I would love to go to you here, Audrey, because similar to the nostalgic horror that we have inside of just the narrative and general storyline in the game, we also have a very, I would say, nostalgic art form. And we have a lot of very subliminally nostalgic color palettes that are used to kind of convey the horror atmosphere inside of the game. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what went into some of the artistic design of the backgrounds that we see inside of the game and what was actually referenced when you were creating them?
Yeah, so I think art style is very important. Of course, it's my job, but we wanted to make sure that we had a really strong direction, especially because it plays into our backstory of the hotel, the town, and the students. So we kind of came up with the term ghost punk analog magic horror as a way to kind of describe our theme and kind of keep us all on the same page.
I'm sorry, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that literally so much. I love that generic, like genre filling term. I'm a big fan of that. Can I just subscribe to that specific genre?
Yes. Yes, it's also my favorite. I'm like, yes, ghost punk. So yeah, so we wanted to make sure that we got a good mood and vibe. It's a haunted hotel. We kept with kind of dark, grungy colors for the environment. Leah is our environment artist, 3D artist. She's amazing. She has done pretty much like the hallway, elevator, the rooms of the hotel, and all the props. So we are walking through a 3D environment where we can see and interact with things. And yeah, it's good.
I love that. No, thank you so much for that explanation. I want to go back over to Miko very, very briefly, and then I'd love to go to Ryako for the second half of this question. For the first part of the question, I wanted to kind of talk very briefly about the gameplay, where most games, specifically horror games, have a lot of emphasis on personality, right? You have a lot of horror tropes in terms of characters, and we see that reflected inside of the characters inside of this game as well. The very specific information that I want to give is that there are 3 specific types that we kind of focus on inside of gameplay. We have what I would consider the red physical based gameplay, which is Sako, who's a tennis player. She has a tennis racket, a tennis ball can, and a water bottle. We also have Briar, who's kind of more of an artsy individual. They have a palette knife, oil paints, and sketchbook. And finally, we have Quentin, who is more of like a media based a protagonist, and they have a flash camera, tripod, and camcorder. Now, Miko, my question for you is, what was the importance of giving every single basically main character certain physical values and emotions around their kind of, I would say, generic horror-based personalities? And the second part of the question, I kind of want to go to you, Ryako, is how did you use the sound design to properly capture their emotions? So the first half, let's go over to Miko for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in that question, but I loved every moment of it because we do think so much about these characters. And actually, one of our core creative pillars on this game is character influence gameplay. A lot of my favorite deck builders are kind of based around one character, and there are some really great games out there like Rogue Book, which is which will allow you to pick more than one character for your team. And we really wanted to do that in this game and make the characters' personalities and archetypes influence the gameplay, especially with this starting deck. Like you said, every character comes in with unique cards that make up your starting deck, and that was really interesting as well, because every card had to have a narrative purpose. It had to be 90s accurate, that this big bulky camcorder would be the one that maybe he borrowed from the high school to bring to the graduation party and happened to have on him during this escape from the hotel. But also gameplay wise, like you mentioned, we have 4 main focuses, which are like deck types. We researched all our favorite card games. Can't go wrong with Magic the Gathering, for example, like just like decades of information there on how to build interesting card tactics. And much like in a game like Magic, where you have colors and you kind of know the types of mechanics you're going to find in that color deck, that's what our 4 focuses are like. So like you said, the physical characters, they tend to be more straightforward and easier to start with. They are straightforward fighting and healing kind of mechanics, versus tactical characters like Quentin with the camcorders are a little bit more about status effects or setting things up during one battle for a bigger payoff later. And another really exciting thing that we love about this game is bringing in that survival horror energy into a turn-based card game. So instead of everyone coming in with the rocket launcher immediately, or something that's very, you know, I'm here to fight monsters, these are just what these kids had on them at the time when they got stuck together and this unexplainable activity happened and they have to fight monsters now. And I think that hopefully gives a fun metaphor in your mind as you're thinking of like these kids using a yo-yo and a tennis racket to try to fight off squishy little mushroom creatures. And yeah, Ryako can talk more about this, but one of the songs that we made, the Explore theme, actually directly is influenced by the characters in your party. If you want to say something about that.
Yeah. So every focus has a special instrument, a special melody, like their own. I love the idea of intertwining themes, and I love the idea of people's choices affecting like the music, because I always think that music is sort of an afterthought in a lot of games. And it's but because I was brought in quite early, I was able to make music that I thought fit the actual categories, the actual focuses. And I really liked the idea of, if you chose like different focuses, that their melodies would, you know, intertwine and play like together. I I really wanted to influence like the gameplay, not just like, you know, in battle, but just overall, because I think it adds a kind of vibe, it adds a really good mood, and it also gives you an idea of like, I don't know, just like what these characters are like, these personalities. So
No, I super duper agree. When you're playing through the game, especially the first time around, which unfortunately didn't have an opportunity to play the game, but I did watch the gameplay extensively, which is where all these amazing questions come from. And one of the things that I noticed about the music is it is really good about driving and compelling the player to kind of like, you know, buckle down and stand their ground against these creatures when they're down inside of the crutches of the final parts of the battle. There's several parts inside of the card scene where you're actually battling the monsters, and you can feel kind of the music getting a little bit more dramatic as you go further and further through the deck and you start rotating, and that HP gets a little bit lower. It really does convey a sense of both urgency and excitement as you go through those battles, which I think is really, really exciting. For this next question, I actually want to go back over to Audrey. Audrey, speaking on the focuses that Miko so aptly described as basically character emotions and personalities, how did you determine what color palettes worked best for every single character, and how best to intertwine their personalities through these focuses inside of the colors?
Yeah, so I think it was important to kind of give each color its own distinction. So first we made sure it was colorblind friendly, so they're all distinctive between each other enough. And I think the colors kind of match like the mood, like red is like a very like strong color. So you think of that with physical. And blue, I think, I don't know, blueprints and, you know, tactical things. So that's kind of where tactical, that color comes in. And then with the characters, their outfits were also influenced by that color. Our costume designer, character designer, Allison, she did amazing job kind of making sure we stuck with the 90s, you know, 90 teenager fashion. But then what they wear are kind of variations of the tones of their focus color. So Sako, the jock, the jock, is wearing red, and she's a physical character.
So, Audrey, I think you actually mentioned something that, which I'm really happy that you kind of brought up here. But Sako is a physical character, as we kind of referenced previously around the focuses. And like I said previously, she is a tennis player. Miko, I'd love to talk to you about kind of your interpretation of a lot of these horror personalities. And I know we've briefly stuck on it, but the fact that the main protagonist, who happens to be a jock and happens to be athletic, is someone who identifies as female is not something that we typically see inside of the horror genre. Was that an intentional choice?
Yeah, definitely. Another thing that's really important to us is that we are a diverse team and we care about showing a diverse world. And I think that, I think we're preaching to the choir here, that lots of people here would agree with that. But with horror, there are these kind of outdated tropes that people of a certain race or gender fall into certain roles. And we wanted these characters to be a real, blend of different sexualities, genders, and ethnicities, some of which you probably won't see yet, but may come out in some of the storylines that happen during the game. And with the archetypes, I love subverting a good trope. I love for you to think a character is going to be one way, but depending on how it turns out, they could go a different way. And one of the fun things about doing a roguelike like this is that you're not only bringing in characters because of the gameplay that you want to play with a certain starting deck, you could also make that decision based on personalities. And maybe over several runs, you start to learn which characters don't get along as well, or which characters maybe are interested in each other, or maybe are good friends, and the way they talk to each other and the way they deal with events during the run will be different. And I think that those are some ways that we can like get more of those horror tropes in there and also challenge those tropes. And it all does come back to how we thought about the world building. They live in the town of Lucid Falls, which is kind of like a tourist trap from the 1920s that is not very popular anymore. And we have reasons why different people immigrating to the US would have ended up in this town and met people and fell in love and had kind of like a blended community of many different types of people represented. And all of that was really exciting to do for me as a creator, because I want to see more stories like that, where people come from different backgrounds but can still play these roles in stories we love, like a good old haunted hotel story.
It's really nice to see a project that not only incorporates the importance of both diversity and breaking different stereotypes, but also brings the nostalgic, amazing family warmth and blending that you see inside of this game. I'll tell you right now, that was pretty smart. Miko, Audrey, Ryako, thank you so much for spending time with me today and discussing the Spirit Lift.
Oh, you're welcome so much. If I could really quickly, since we shout out Leah and Allison, I also want to shout out Dale, who's our lead dev, and Tracy, who does our social media marketing. We have a lovely team, and we're so happy to be working on this awesome game together. So thanks so much, Sharpie. This has been so great.
Thank you. And to all of the viewers, I want to remind you all that you can also keep up on the Spirit Lift release date 2BH by following their website and newsletter at prettysmartgames.com or wishlisting the game right now on Steam. Highly, highly recommend. They are very, very active on TikTok for those TikTokers out there. So make sure you're staying tuned to everything Pretty Smart Games. Thank you again, Miko, Audrey, and Ryako. And that was yet another game developer interview here at Game Devs of Color Expo 2023. But stay tuned, we have even more developer interviews, panels, and much, much more this Game Devs of Color Expo 2023.